He quarantined himself after being exposed to coronavirus, but thankfully he tested negative for the virus. U.S. Senator Ted Cruz of Texas joins us now on the phone to talk about the worldwide coronavirus outbreak and the government response. So, Senator Cruz, thank you for taking the time to talk with me today. We know that you're busy.
Thank you for having me, Kimberly. Good to be with you.
So last month you had to self-quarantine because late February you briefly came into contact with someone who tested positive for coronavirus. And you actually self-quarantined twice. So take us through your quarantine experience.
Well, at this point, it is much the experience that Texans and Americans are experiencing across the state and across the country, which is that I encountered two people who tested positive for coronavirus. And so I made the decision to self-quarantine, spent 11 days just in my home, not leaving my home, staying at least 6 feet away from my family. That was right at the outset of when this outbreak came to the United States. We've since seen, as across most of Texas, we now have stay-at-home orders, or people are working from home. So for the past month, I've been effectively in the same thing. It hasn't actually been a full-on quarantine because I'm no longer have not encountered anyone who is positive within the 14-day incubation period, but am staying home with my family. I'm working from home. Heidi's working from home. Both our girls are doing distance learning schooling from home. And so it's much the same as people throughout Beaumont and all across the state trying to comply with the public health guidelines.
You started what's called a tele-town hall tour last week where you actually spoke with the Beaumont Chamber of Commerce. So what are these tele-town hall tours and what was the discussion like with the Beaumont Chamber?
Well, any time there is a crisis or catastrophe in the state of Texas, it's my responsibility to be there. And I try very hard to be there on the ground with the people who are impacted, who are hurting. And that's been true the entire 8 years I've served in the Senate. It was true, for example, with Hurricane Harvey, which was obviously a devastating natural disaster for the state of Texas and the Gulf Coast. And I spent over the next 6 months to a year, spent a great deal of time traveling to every affected community, being with the community, was in Beaumont 3, 4, 5 times, and all up and down the Gulf Coast. That's very much what I want to be doing here and now today, is being with everyone who is hurting and impacted both by this public health crisis and by this economic crisis that has been precipitated. Unfortunately, given the social distancing guidelines, being there physically in person, particularly with large groups of people, is not feasible or advisable right now. And so what I'm doing instead is I've launched a teletour where I am traveling the state virtually and doing it from my living room at home in Houston, but engaging in either phone conferences or telephone or video conferences with various leaders in affected communities throughout the state. So in the past several days, I've done conferences with the Texas Hospital Association, with the Texas Trucking Association, with the Houston Hispanic Chamber of Commerce, with the Beaumont Chamber of Commerce, with the Tyler and Texarkana and Lufkin Chambers of Commerce. I'm doing a call later today with a group of flight attendants who are impacted nationally, and just trying to virtually be there in very much the same way I would in person, just using the great blessings of technology.
What do you think about the state response and federal response to fight coronavirus? Governor Greg Abbott has his statewide stay-at-home order in place, and he's lifted certain restrictions to get more support for our health system. And our Workforce Commission has extended hours to help Texans submitting unemployment claims. So what do you think about the response efforts?
Well, I think the state of Texas is blessed to have experienced and very capable leadership, and particularly in times of crisis, that leadership comes out. I'm working very closely with Governor Abbott. He and I are close friends and have worked together for decades. And I'm working very, very closely with mayors and county judges all across the state. Our system of government, we see really bipartisan cooperation, whether it so happens that a particular local official may be a Democrat or a Republican. We work together in times of crisis, and this coronavirus pandemic certainly fits the bill. And so we're seeing In Washington, 2 weeks ago, as you know, Congress passed a $2 trillion emergency relief bill. I worked very actively to help get that passed. We ended up seeing overwhelming bipartisan support. In the Senate, it passed 96-0, which means every single Republican supported it, every single Democrat supported it. I voted for it, and so did Bernie Sanders. That shows the breadth of the agreement. And the emergency relief bill was designed to really help the people who are being hurt right now, to get individual checks to the families that are hurting, and those checks should be coming out and arriving within days now, to get emergency loans to small businesses, all the restaurants and bars and movie theaters and bowling alleys and hair salons and nail salons that have shut down, to get emergency relief, guaranteed loans that will be forgiven if they're used for salary to rehire workers. The objective is to get as many workers as possible still employed. We've seen far too many people lose their jobs. We've seen 17 million Americans in the last 3 weeks lose their job. The emergency relief bill is to try to slow that down and hopefully even have a chance of turning that around, keep people in their jobs, keep the payroll going, and all of that is designed to be a short-term bridge loan so we can get through this catastrophe and get back to work. My priority is beat this pandemic and get everyone back to work. The Texas economy was surging, it was roaring until this pandemic hit us, and when we came out of it, we're going to come back roaring, and that's my priority, working with local communities to get everyone back to work and then do it in a way that keeps us all safe.
Well, thank you, Senator Cruz, for taking the time to talk to us. We appreciate it, and we hope you stay safe.
Thank you. God bless.